the betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. While I was pouring my heart into building a life with someone I trusted, they were plotting to take it all away, piece by piece, with calculated precision. I wasn't just hurt, I was deceived, manipulated, and left in the dark. But what happens when the truth finally emerges? When the mask of love and loyalty is ripped off to reveal the selfish, cold reality beneath? I spent months gathering the pieces of a life I thought I knew, documenting every word, every action, until I had enough to expose their plan. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. About finding a way to rebuild, even when it felt like everything I had worked for was slipping away. The path forward wasn't easy, and it wasn't pretty. But it was mine to carve. This is the story of what happens when betrayal forces you to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is. It's a story about strength, justice, and learning to walk away from the life you once knew, ready to build something new. And for the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Your support means more than words can express. This story, my story, wouldn't have the same impact without you here to share it, reflect on it, and, hopefully, learn from it. We've gone through a lot together, and I hope it's inspired some part of you to keep pushing forward in your own life, no matter how heavy the weight of betrayal may feel. But the journey doesn't end here. Now that we've reached this point, it's time for me to dig deeper into what's really at the core of this story, the truth behind every choice, every twist, and every moment of reckoning. And I want you to come with me. So, if you've been following along and feel ready to dive into more, join me as I continue uncovering the layers. Let's explore the deeper emotions, the motivations behind the actions, and ultimately, how we rise from the ashes. I invite you to share your thoughts, comments, and feedback. Let's keep the conversation going, because there's still so much more to uncover. Together, let's break this story wide open. The clinking of glasses and soft chatter from other tables seemed to fade away as Julian Rivers studied his wife, Caroline, across the dinner table. They had been married for 6 years now, but her elegant smile and graceful manner still captivated him. Yet tonight, something felt off. "Caroline, you haven't touched your food," Julian remarked, setting his fork down gently. Caroline looked up, her smile almost too practiced. "I'm just not hungry tonight." "It's nothing." Julian eyed her with concern. They were at one of downtown Seattle's most exclusive restaurants, a place that had cost him a significant amount of his savings to book for their anniversary. It was supposed to be a celebration, but her distant demeanor cast a shadow over the evening. "You know, we could have rescheduled if you're not feeling well," Julian offered, his voice gentle. "Not on our 6th anniversary," she replied, squeezing his hand for a moment before pulling away. The waiter approached with their main courses, perfectly prepared salmon with a delicate citrus glaze. But Julian couldn't focus on the meal. His mind was fixed on the subtle changes he'd noticed in Caroline over the past few months. She hadn't been herself. The silver necklace he'd given her on their first anniversary was absent tonight, replaced by a plain silver chain. And her eyes, her blue eyes, no longer sparkled the way they used to. Julian's attention was broken when he noticed a small folded note tucked under his plate. He casually picked it up and slipped it into his pocket. "I'll be right back," Julian excused himself, standing up abruptly. "Just need to visit the restroom." Inside the privacy of the restroom, Julian unfolded the note. It was brief but chilling. "Don't eat. It's poisoned." A cold shiver ran down his spine. His mind raced, trying to process the message. Was it a prank? Was it meant for someone else? Julian took a deep breath and splashed cold water on his face. He wasn't a paranoid man, but his logical mind, shaped by years of solving complex problems in his career as an architect, immediately began analyzing every possibility. When he returned to the table, his heart was pounding. Caroline hadn't noticed his absence, her gaze still fixed on her phone. "Everything okay?" she asked absently, her voice distant. "Yes," Julian answered, slipping the note into his jacket pocket. He couldn't help but feel the tension tightening in his chest. Something wasn't right, and tonight was only the beginning of a much darker revelation. Nothing about Julian suggested he should be the recipient of such a warning. He returned to the table, his demeanor composed despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. "Everything okay?" Caroline asked, her fork poised over her untouched meal. "Fine," Julian replied, sliding back into his seat. "Just needed a moment." He watched her carefully as she took a small bite of her food, then set her fork down again. "I think I'll just have some water," she said. "This rich food isn't agreeing with me tonight." Julian nodded, pretending to take a bite of his own meal while discreetly depositing it in his napkin. "Maybe we should skip dessert and head home early," he suggested. "You can get comfortable, and I'll make you some tea." Relief flickered across Caroline's face. "That sounds perfect, actually." As Julian paid the bill, his mind methodically sorted through the events of the evening. The note wasn't a random occurrence. Someone had deliberately warned him, and Caroline's behavior, the reluctance to eat, her eagerness to leave, lined up too perfectly with the warning to be coincidental. The universe operated on logic and patterns, Julian knew. He'd built his career understanding those patterns. Now, he would apply that same disciplined approach to understanding what was happening in his marriage. Streetlights swept rhythmically across the interior of their Audi as Julian drove through downtown Seattle. Beside him, Caroline stared out the passenger window. Her profile was illuminated in intermittent flashes. "The restaurant really outdid themselves tonight," she said, breaking the silence. "That wine pairing was exceptional." Julian noted the forced casualness in her tone. "You hardly drank any," he replied evenly. "I told you, my stomach feels off," she said with a slight shrug. "Maybe I'm coming down with something." She turned to face him. "Did you enjoy the food at least?" "It looked impressive," he said, deliberately vague. "Not sure it lived up to the price tag," Caroline said with a dismissive wave. "That's how these high-end places are. More style than substance." Julian tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "More style than substance. An apt description for things beyond overpriced restaurants." "Do you remember our first anniversary?" Caroline asked. "That Italian place on 6th Avenue? Where the waiter spilled red wine all over your new shirt." "I remember," Julian said, his voice softening. "You helped me soak it out when we got home." Caroline smiled, seeming genuinely nostalgic. "We were so broke back then," she said. "You were still at that tech startup, working insane hours." "Things change," Julian replied. The familiar landscape of their neighborhood came into view, manicured lawns, tasteful modern homes. The trappings of upper-middle-class success. "For the better," Caroline added quickly. "Look at everything we've built together." Julian pulled into their driveway. The automatic lights flickered on, illuminating their modern home, a spacious 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house with an open-concept living area. All the check boxes of success, he thought, were properly ticked. He helped Caroline out of the car, noticing how she subtly pulled away from his touch. Inside, Caroline slipped off her heels at the door. "I think I'll take a shower and head to bed early. Rain check on that tea?" "Of course," Julian replied, though the word felt hollow. "I have some work emails to catch up on anyway. I'll be in my office." He watched her climb the stairs, her movements deliberately measured, as though she were performing for an audience. Once she disappeared into the master bathroom, Julian stood motionless in the entryway, listening to the distant sound of the shower starting. 10 years of shared meals, vacations, arguments, reconciliations. A decade of building what he thought was a partnership. Now, standing in the home they'd chosen together, Julian felt like a stranger. He walked to the kitchen and retrieved a bottle of water from the refrigerator. His reflection distorted in the stainless steel doors, stretched and warped, just like his perception of his marriage had become in the span of a single evening. The shower upstairs shut off. Julian took his water and headed to his home office, closing the door behind him with a soft click. His office was a testament to his ordered mind. 3 monitors arranged precisely on a minimalist desk. Bookshelves organized by subject matter and then alphabetically. A whiteboard covered in neat handwriting, project timelines and ideas for his latest software project. He locked the door, then removed the note from his pocket and placed it on his desk. The paper was high quality, probably from the restaurant's own stock. The handwriting was precise, each letter carefully formed. Definitely not Caroline's looping script, which he knew intimately from years of birthday cards and shopping lists. Julian opened a drawer and withdrew a small file containing various documents, notes, grocery lists, birthday cards from Caroline. He compared them methodically to the warning note. Definitely not the same hand. Who had written it? A waiter? A concerned patron who'd overheard something? And more importantly, was there any truth to the warning? He pulled his keyboard toward him and began to type. A new document, organized chronologically. He titled it Behavioral Changes and began listing his observations. 3 months ago, Caroline joins a new gym/wellness center. 2 months ago, new password on phone. Previously shared passwords. 2 months ago. Girls' night increased from monthly to weekly 6 weeks ago. New clothing purchases higher end than usual. 1 month ago. Started cleanse diet from a new nutrition coach 3 weeks ago. Changed perfume 2 weeks ago. Unexplained 2-hour absence while grocery shopping individually, each item seemingly innocent. Together, they formed a pattern that Julian couldn't ignore. He opened his browser and logged into their shared cloud storage. Caroline's phone automatically backed up to this account, a security measure they'd implemented years ago after she'd lost her previous device. The most recent backup was from yesterday. Julian navigated through folders, finding nothing immediately suspicious. Text messages were minimal, mostly logistics and brief exchanges with friends he recognized. Her call history showed frequent calls to a number he didn't recognize. Julian ran the number through a reverse lookup service. Adrian Sutter, nutritionist and wellness coach. The website showed a fit man in his early 40s with perfect teeth and a practiced smile. Julian leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. A nutrition coach that aligned with Caroline's recent focus on clean eating and her new gym routine. But why the secrecy? Why the password-protected phone? Why the warning note at dinner? He returned to the cloud backup, diving deeper. Deleted items were more difficult to access but not impossible for someone with his technical expertise. After nearly an hour of methodical work, Julian found a cache of deleted photos. His stomach tightened as the first image loaded, Caroline in their bed, naked except for the silver pendant he'd given her. Alone in this photo. But the implication of others being present during the photo session was clear. Julian's face remained impassive as he continued through the recovered files. His heartbeat remained steady, his breathing controlled. Only the whitening of his knuckles as he gripped the edge of his desk betrayed any emotion. More photos appeared. Caroline with a man he now recognized as Adrian Sutter. Not just any affair photos, these were intimate, explicit, taken in hotel rooms, in Adrian's office, in the front seat of Adrian's car. Then came the text messages, hundreds of them, recovered from deleted archives. Julian read through them methodically, cataloging information. I is getting suspicious. Caroline had written 6 weeks ago. They always do eventually, Adrian had replied. But we have options. I'm not sure about this, Caroline texted 2 weeks later. It seems extreme. It's perfectly natural, Adrian responded. I've helped others through similar situations. Trust me. And yesterday. Tomorrow night. After dinner. Everything's ready. Just make sure he eats it all. Julian closed the browser and sat motionless, processing. The evidence aligned perfectly with the warning. His wife and her lover had planned to poison him at their anniversary dinner. He should feel rage, betrayal, heartbreak. Instead, he felt an icy clarity descending like a protective shield. The problem was now defined. And defined problems could be solved. Julian pulled out a fresh notepad and began writing again, this time creating a structured investigation plan. You need allies. Evidence. A strategy point. 10 years of marriage had ended tonight. Caroline didn't know it yet. But Julian had already devised a precisely executed plan to ensure that those who betrayed him would face consequences proportional to their actions. Julian Rivers, senior software engineer and deceived husband, began to map out his code of justice. The university cafe buzzed with the energy of young minds fueled by caffeine and ambition. Julian sat at a corner table, watching the door. 3 days had passed since the anniversary dinner, and he maintained a careful facade of normalcy at home. He went to work, made appropriate small talk with Caroline, and kept his discoveries locked away in encrypted files on his private server. Leo Gale pushed through the cafe door, scanning the room until he spotted Julian. Tall and lanky, with perpetually disheveled hair, Leo looked every bit the academic he was. He approached Julian's table with a warm smile. 10 years, and you still look exactly the same, Leo said, sliding into the seat across from him. It's almost disturbing. Disciplined living, Julian replied with a faint smile. You, on the other hand, are sporting some distinguished gray. Leo ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The students do that. Every semester adds another patch. He studied Julian's face. Your message was cryptic. Need to discuss a concerning pattern. What's going on? Julian had met Leo during their undergraduate years, before Julian switched from psychology to computer science. Leo had stayed the course, eventually earning his PhD and securing a teaching position at Austin University. More importantly, he'd remained a friend even as their paths diverged, one of the few people Julian truly trusted. I need your professional perspective, Julian said, keeping his voice low, in your discretion. Leo's expression grew serious. Of course. Julian placed a manila folder on the table. My wife is having an affair with her nutrition coach. They planned to poison me at our anniversary dinner 3 nights ago. Leo's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. I was warned anonymously. Julian continued. I've since verified the affair and found text messages suggesting they were planning to dose me with something. I need to understand what I'm dealing with, both psychologically and practically. Leo slowly opened the folder, scanning the printed text messages and photos Julian had selected. His face remained professionally neutral, though his fingers tightened on the paper. Jesus, Julian, he finally said. Have you gone to the police? With what? Text messages about making me eat something? Photos proving my wife is unfaithful but not criminal? I need more. Leo nodded slowly. What do you need from me? 2 things. First, your psychological assessment of what might motivate someone to take this path. Second, your help in tracking patterns and gathering evidence. Leo rubbed his chin. The psychological component is complex. Affairs happen for many reasons: boredom, unmet needs, opportunity, character flaws. But escalating to harm. He paused, thinking. That suggests either significant external pressure or a more disturbing psychological profile. And this Adrian Sutter? The nutrition coach. If he's suggesting poison as a solution, this isn't his first rodeo, Leo said grimly. Manipulators like this usually have a history. They identify vulnerable targets and exploit them. Julian nodded. This aligned with my own analysis. I need to know if he's done this before. I have access to academic databases, court records. I can help research him, Leo offered. But Julian. He leaned forward. What's your endgame here? Divorce? Prosecution? Justice? Julian said simply, proportional consequences for their actions. Leo studied his friend's face. You're remarkably calm for someone who just discovered his wife is plotting with her lover. Emotions cloud judgment, Julian replied. I need clarity right now. Compartmentalization only works for so long, Leo warned. Eventually, you'll have to process this. I'll process it when I've resolved it, Julian said firmly. Will you help me? Leo closed the folder and slid it back across the table. Of course I will. But promise me one thing, no matter what we find. We stay within legal boundaries. Evidence gathering only. Julian gave a single, decisive nod. Agreed. Then let's get started, Leo said. Tell me everything else you know about this Adrian Sutter. The next morning, Julian sat in his car across the street from Seattle Wellness Center. A sleek, modern building of glass and brushed steel. According to their website, they offered everything from nutritional counseling to specialized fitness training. Adrian Sutter was listed as their head nutrition consultant. Julian checked his watch. 9:15 a.m. According to the schedule he'd found on Caroline's cloud account, she had an appointment with Adrian at 9:30 a.m. She told Julian she was meeting a friend for breakfast. At 9:22, Caroline's white SUV pulled into the parking lot. Julian watched as she checked her makeup in the rearview mirror before exiting the vehicle. She looked confident, happy even, as she walked into the building. Julian started a timer on his phone. If this was truly a professional nutrition consultation, it should last approximately an hour. While waiting, he opened his laptop and connected to a secure hotspot. Leo had sent over preliminary research on Adrian Sutter the night before. The man's professional credentials were legitimate, a licensed dietitian with a master's degree in nutritional science from a reputable university. His business seemed successful, with glowing online reviews and a respectable social media following. But there were gaps in his history. A 2-year period where he seemed to disappear from public records. Followed by a relocation to Seattle from Portland. No criminal record, but a few civil complaints had been settled out of court. Nothing that explicitly raised red flags, but enough inconsistencies to warrant deeper investigation. Julian's timer hit the 45-minute mark when Caroline emerged from the building. She wasn't alone. Adrian Sutter walked beside her, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. They stopped by her car, standing closer than any professional relationship would justify. Adrian said something that made Caroline laugh, then quickly scanned the parking lot before kissing her. Julian took several photos with a telephoto lens attached to his phone. More evidence for the file. The kiss ended, and Adrian handed Caroline what appeared to be a small paper bag. She placed it in her purse, nodded at something he said, then got in her car. Julian waited until both Caroline and Adrian had left before driving to his next destination, the university library, where Leo had secured a private research room. Leo was already there when Julian arrived, surrounded by printouts and an open laptop. "You're not going to like what I found," Leo said without preamble. Julian set down his bag. "Tell me." Adrian Sutter worked at a wellness center in Portland, Oregon, called Pure Vitality. 5 years ago, one of his clients, a woman named Eliza Brandt, was widowed when her husband died suddenly of what was initially ruled natural causes, heart failure. Leo slid a printout across the table. It was a news article with a photo of a grieving woman standing next to Adrian at a funeral. The autopsy showed elevated levels of a compound derived from certain herbal supplements, Leo continued. Nothing illegal on its own, but in high concentrations, it can stress the cardiovascular system. Not enough evidence to rule it homicide, but enough questions that the insurance company delayed payment. "Let me guess," Julian said, his voice cold. Adrian testified about the husband's health. Leo nodded. He said the man had pre-existing heart issues that he'd been treating holistically. The case was eventually closed as an accidental death. 6 months later, Adrian moved to Austin, Texas, and opened his practice here. 9 months after that, Eliza Brandt moved to Austin too. They were briefly together, then separated. Julian processed this information. "So he's done this before." "Possibly," Leo cautioned. "It's circumstantial, but combine it with those text messages you found." He let the implication hang in the air. "I need access to their current communications," Julian decided. "And I need to know exactly what compound they're planning to use." "That's crossing into legally questionable territory," Leo warned. "Not if I only access accounts and devices that are legally mine," Julian countered. "The cloud account is joint, registered to both of us. And I can place monitoring software on my own home network." Leo looked unconvinced but didn't argue further. What about the compound? Julian continued. That bag he gave her today could contain it. I'll find it, Julian said. I need to know what we're dealing with. If it's the same substance used in Portland, that strengthens the case considerably. And then what? Leo asked. Go to the police? Julian's expression hardened. First, I gather irrefutable evidence. Then I decide how best to ensure they face appropriate consequences. I know that look, Julian, Leo said warily. You're planning something beyond simple evidence gathering. I'm planning justice, Julian replied. Nothing more, nothing less. As he left the library, Julian's phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. Working late tonight, don't wait up for dinner. Love you. Julian texted back, no problem, take care, love you too. The words felt foreign, a code he no longer understood. But they maintained the facade, which was all that mattered for now. The house was dark and silent when Julian finally returned home. Caroline's working late had extended well past midnight, according to the GPS tracker he'd placed on her car earlier in the day. The tracker showed her vehicle parked outside an apartment complex across town, presumably Adrian's residence. Julian moved through the house methodically, setting up small, unobtrusive cameras in the kitchen, living room, and hallway. Nothing in the bedrooms or bathrooms. He had ethical lines he wouldn't cross, even now. He only needed to document their conversations about him, not their intimate moments. That was for his office. Julian connected the cameras to his private server and tested the feeds. Everything worked perfectly. Next, he turned his attention to Caroline's home laptop. She rarely used it anymore, preferring her phone and tablet, but it remained on her desk in the spare bedroom she used as a craft room. Julian didn't need her password. As the household's technical support for a decade, he had administrator access to every device on the network. Within minutes, he'd installed monitoring software that would log all activity and forward it to a secure server. The final step was the most crucial. Julian needed to find the substance they planned to use. He started in the kitchen, methodically checking every cabinet, reading labels on every supplement and medication. Nothing seemed out of place, but he moved to the master bathroom, searching through Caroline's cosmetics and medications. Again, nothing unusual. Finally, he checked her closet, carefully examining bags and pockets without disturbing their arrangement. In the pocket of a rarely used gym bag, he found the paper Adrian had given her. Inside was an unlabeled amber bottle containing what appeared to be herbal capsules. Julian carefully removed two, placing them in a small evidence bag, then returned everything exactly as he'd found it. Back in his office, Julian uploaded all the day's findings to a secure server, then sent an encrypted message to Leo Gale, need testing capabilities for unknown substance. Any contacts in the chemistry department? Leo's reply came minutes later, Professor Diana Vega. Discreet, thorough. Can meet tomorrow. Julian set the evidence bag aside and turned to his computer. Time to check the cloud back up again. Caroline had been careless in the beginning, leaving traces of her affair in deleted files that Julian could recover. She'd grown more cautious recently, but people in the throes of infatuation rarely maintain perfect operational security. Sure enough, after several hours of methodical searching, Julian found a cache of recently deleted videos. His face remained impassive as he watched his wife and Adrian together in various hotel rooms, including one Julian recognized as the suite he'd booked for a business trip last month, a trip Caroline had apparently made use of in his absence. More damning than the physical betrayal was the conversation Julian captured in one video. After their encounter, as they lay in Julian's paid-for hotel bed, Caroline and Adrian discussed him. He suspects nothing, Caroline said on screen. He's too wrapped up in his work to notice anything, Adrian replied, stroking her hair. Men like him never do. They think their big brains make them invulnerable. I still don't understand why we can't just. Caroline trailed off, and Adrian cut her off. A divorce would cost you half of everything. Is that what you want? To start our life together with half of what you deserve? Adrian's voice was almost persuasive. No, but the compound is completely natural, Caroline assured him. It stresses the heart initially, but the effects build over time. Multiple small doses, carefully administered. By the time anything happens, it will look like natural causes. I've seen it work before. You make it sound so clinical, Caroline said. It's chemistry, that's all, Adrian replied. No different from all those programming problems your husband solves. Just a different kind of code. Julian stopped the video. The evidence was now overwhelming. His wife and her lover weren't just planning an affair. They were plotting his death for financial gain. He should feel devastated, enraged. Instead, he felt a cold clarity settle over him. This was no longer just about gathering evidence. This was about survival and injustice. Julian began typing again, outlining a new plan. This time, he wouldn't be the target. He would be the trigger. You understand what you're showing me is deeply disturbing, Professor Diana Vega said, looking up from her microscope. A compact woman with intelligent eyes behind round glasses, she'd agreed to meet Julian and Leo in her private lab early on a Saturday morning as a favor to Leo. I understand, Julian replied. I only need to know what it is, not how to use it. Diana sighed. It's a concentrated extract from a plant called monkshood, mixed with several other herbal compounds. Alone, in small doses, it's sometimes used in homeopathic medicine. In this concentration, she shook her head, it would cause arrhythmia, elevated blood pressure, and significant cardiac stress. One dose wouldn't kill a healthy adult, but repeated exposure could trigger a cardiac event that might appear natural, especially in someone with any existing heart conditions. Which I don't have, Julian noted. Thank goodness for that, Diana said. Where did you get this? Julian and Leo exchanged glances. Better you don't know, Leo told her. But I assure you, we're gathering evidence, not planning to use it. Diana carefully sealed the capsules in an evidence container. I'll provide a formal analysis for your records, but please tell me you're taking this to the authorities. When we have enough evidence, Julian assured her. Later, as they walked across the nearly empty campus, Leo voiced his concerns. She's right. We should take what we have to the police now. It's not enough, Julian replied. They've been careful. The substance isn't explicitly illegal. The messages are suggestive, but not definitive. I need irrefutable proof of intent. How do you plan to get that? Leo asked. They're unlikely to confess on record. People reveal their true intentions under pressure, Julian said. I've devised a scenario that will expose theirs. Leo stopped walking. What kind of scenario? A controlled environment. A private dinner where I can document their behavior and conversations. A situation where they believe they have the advantage, but where I'm actually in control. You're setting a trap, Leo realized. With yourself as bait. Julian continued walking. I'm setting a stage. And yes, I'll be playing a role. But they'll be the ones delivering the most important lines. This is dangerous, Julian. If they're willing to poison you once, they won't have the opportunity, Julian cut in. I'll control every element of the environment, including the food. In fact, I'm counting on their attempt. Leo caught up to him. You've already decided how this ends, haven't you? Justice has only one logical conclusion, Julian replied. Those who conspire to harm others must face consequences proportional to their intentions. That sounds disturbingly close to revenge. Revenge is emotional. This is rational. Julian stopped and turned to his friend. They plotted my death, Leo. Not a quick one, but a gradual poisoning designed to appear natural. They discussed it casually, like solving a math problem. They deserve whatever comes next. Leo studied Julian's face. Just promise me you won't cross a line you can't come back from. You're hurt and betrayed, and that's completely understandable. But don't let their actions transform you into something you're not. I'm not being transformed, Julian said quietly. I'm being revealed, perhaps for the first time. The conversation ended there, but Julian's planning continued. Over the next week, Julian gathered more evidence through the cameras he'd installed and the monitoring software on Caroline's devices. He documented multiple instances where Caroline added the capsules to his food or drinks, only for Julian to dispose of them when she wasn't looking. He recorded her phone conversations with Adrian, their growing impatience with the slow progress of their plan, and their discussions of what they would do with Julian's life insurance and investment portfolio. Every piece of evidence was carefully logged and backed up to multiple secure locations. And with each new revelation, Julian refined his final scenario, the one that would bring everything into the open. "A surprise dinner?" Caroline asked, her voice carrying the perfect note of surprise. "What's the occasion?" Julian smiled across the breakfast table. "Do I need an occasion to do something special for my wife? Consider it anniversary part 2. The first one didn't go as planned with you feeling unwell." "That's so thoughtful," Caroline said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "Where?" "It's a surprise. A private chef in a special location. I've arranged everything. Just be ready at 7 on Saturday." "I can't wait," Caroline said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Should I dress up?" "Absolutely," Julian replied. "It's gonna be a night to remember." As soon as Caroline left for her yoga class, which the GPS tracker showed was actually another visit to Adrian's apartment, Julian made his final preparations. He'd rented a commercial kitchen space that catered to food photographers and cooking classes, a neutral location with excellent lighting and multiple angles for the cameras he would install. He contacted Adrian through an anonymous email account, posing as a wellness center looking for nutrition experts for a special event. The generous consultation fee he offered ensured Adrian accepted immediately, even when told the event was Saturday evening. Julian spent the day setting up the kitchen. Cameras were placed strategically to capture every angle. Microphones were hidden in decorative elements on the table. A separate prep area was established where Julian would prepare 3 identical-looking meals, 1 untouched for himself, and 2 containing a powerful but non-toxic purgative for Caroline and Adrian. By 6 p.m., everything was ready. Julian surveyed the space one final time. The table was elegantly set, the lighting perfect, the surveillance system tested and functioning. All evidence was being streamed in real time to his secure server, with Leo monitoring remotely as a precaution. Julian prepared the 3 meals, wearing gloves, and carefully keeping the portions separate. The purgative he'd chosen would cause significant discomfort, but no lasting harm, a proportional response to their plans for him. Each dish was covered with a silver dome, ready to be served at 7:45 p.m. Julian changed into his suit and prepared for his guests. The final act was about to begin. The commercial kitchen had been transformed. Soft lighting, elegant table settings, and the gentle notes of classical music created an atmosphere of refined celebration. Julian stood by the door, watching as Caroline's car pulled into the parking lot. Right on schedule, his pulse remained steady, his breathing controlled. Months of discovering betrayal and plotting a response had honed his emotional control to a razor's edge. Tonight would proceed according to plan, each element carefully orchestrated. Caroline entered first, wearing a sleek black dress Julian had never seen before. Her smile faltered momentarily when she saw the intimate setup. "This is not a restaurant," she said, glancing around. "Better," Julian replied, taking her coat. "Private chef, private space. Just for us." "You went all out," Caroline said, recovering her composure. "It smells amazing." "I have a few special touches planned," Julian said. "But first, I invited a surprise guest for the appetizer course. Someone you've been working with, who's helped you so much lately." Caroline's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" The door opened behind them. Adrian Sutter walked in, freezing momentarily when he saw Caroline. He recovered quickly, extending his hand to Julian. "Mr. Rivers, I'm Adrian Sutter. I believe you contacted me about a nutritional consultation for an event." Julian shook his hand firmly. "Indeed I did. Please, come in." I believe you know my wife, Caroline. Adrian glanced between them, his professional smile never wavering. Mrs. Rivers, yes. We've met at the wellness center. Caroline's face had drained of color. Julian, what is this? A celebration, Julian said smoothly. You've been so dedicated to your new health regimen. I thought it would be nice to have a nutrition coach join us to discuss how we can both benefit from his expertise. The trap was set. Julian watched their micro-expressions, the panic behind their eyes, the subtle glances they exchanged, the careful recalibration of their approach. What a thoughtful surprise, Caroline finally said. Adrian has been so helpful with my new diet plan. I'm honored to be included, Adrian added, his voice betraying no tension. Julian gestured toward the table. Please, sit. I've prepared everything myself. A special menu designed with wellness in mind. They took their seats, Caroline and Adrian careful to maintain appropriate distance. Julian brought the covered dishes from the warming area, setting one before each of them with a flourish. Before we begin, Julian said, raising his water glass, a toast. To health, to honesty, and to new beginnings. The irony wasn't lost on his guests, who raised their glasses with noticeably less enthusiasm. Julian removed the silver domes with a practiced movement. Herb-crusted salmon with quinoa and roasted vegetables. All organic, of course. This looks wonderful, Adrian said, examining the plate with professional interest. You have culinary talents I wasn't aware of, Mr. Rivers. Julian, please, and I have many interests beyond programming. Cooking is a science of its own, wouldn't you agree? Combining elements in precise measurements to achieve desired results. Adrian nodded, taking a small bite. Excellent flavor profile. Caroline followed suit, though Julian noticed she was merely pushing food around her plate. It's delicious, Julian. I had no idea you could cook like this. We've been married 10 years, and yet there's still so much we don't know about each other, Julian replied evenly. The conversation continued, a delicate dance of pleasantries and professional nutrition advice from Adrian. Julian ate his meal calmly, watching as both Caroline and Adrian consumed their doctor portions. 20 minutes into the meal, Adrian shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Caroline pressed a hand to her stomach, her face paling. Is something wrong? Julian asked innocently. I'm suddenly not feeling well, Caroline said. Maybe it's just. Julian pointed toward the door. The bathroom is through that door. Perhaps you need a moment. Caroline hurried away. Adrian was now visibly uncomfortable, sweat beading on his forehead. Are you also feeling unwell, Adrian? Julian asked. How strange. The food tastes fine to me. Adrian stood abruptly. Excuse me, I need to. Before you go, Julian said, his voice dropping all pretense of warmth. I think you should see something. Julian placed the folded note from their anniversary dinner on the table. Your waiter warned me, he said. He worked part-time at the restaurant and recognized you, Adrian. You've done this before. Adrian stared at the note, his face contorting with both physical discomfort and shock. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Eliza Brandt's husband in Seattle? Another nutritional client whose heart mysteriously gave out after months of your special supplements. Adrian's eyes darted toward the bathroom where Caroline had disappeared. This is absurd. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, Julian said calmly. Not unless you want the police to find you. They're on their way, along with paramedics. Don't worry, what you've ingested won't kill you. Unlike the monk's compound you and my wife have been adding to my food for weeks. The blood drained from Adrian's face. You have no proof of anything. I have everything, Julian replied. Every conversation. Every text message. Every video. The tainted capsules with your fingerprints. Your previous victim in Seattle. And now, your reaction to this confrontation, all being recorded as we speak. Adrian lunged forward suddenly, grabbing for Julian. But the purgative had weakened him considerably. Julian easily sidestepped, watching Adrian collapse to his knees. "What did you give us?" Adrian gasped. "Just a taste of your own medicine," Julian replied. "Though significantly less lethal than what you planned for me." The bathroom door opened and Caroline emerged, clinging to the doorframe for support. Her carefully applied makeup was smeared, her complexion ashen. "Julian. We need to go to the hospital," she said weakly. "Something's wrong with the food." "Only your portions," Julian replied calmly. "Mine was prepared separately." Caroline's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You poison us." "I administered a powerful purgative," Julian corrected. "Temporary discomfort. Nothing more. Unlike the cardiac-stressing compound you've been slipping into my meals for weeks." "I don't know what you're talking about," Caroline said. But her denial lacked conviction. Julian reached into his jacket and removed a tablet. With a few taps, audio filled the room, Caroline and Adrian's voices from one of the recordings Julian had captured. "How much longer will this take?" Caroline's recorded voice asked. "Patience," Adrian replied. "We need to be careful with the dosage. Too much at once would raise suspicions. This way his heart will gradually weaken until it simply gives out. A tragedy, but a natural one as far as anyone will know." Caroline staggered to a chair, collapsing into it. "You've been spying on us." "Gathering evidence," Julian corrected. "After someone warned me at our anniversary dinner." "Who?" Caroline demanded. "Does it matter? What matters is that I know everything. Your affair. Your plot. The compound from the same plant extract used on Adrian's previous victim in Seattle." Adrian, still on his knees, glared at Julian. "You smug bastard. You think you're so clever." "Not clever," Julian replied. "Just methodical. While you were both plotting my demise, I was documenting every step. The evidence is already with my lawyer and several other secure locations." Caroline wiped at her eyes, tears streaking her mascara. "What do you want? Money? Is that it?" The question struck Julian as so fundamentally absurd that he actually laughed, a short, harsh sound devoid of humor. "What I want," he said, his voice low and precise, "is justice. You planned to murder me slowly for financial gain, and you almost succeeded." The sound of sirens grew audible in the distance. Adrian tried to stand, stumbling toward the door, but another wave of cramping doubled him over. "They're coming for you," Julian said. "Both of you. The paramedics will treat your symptoms, and the police will take your statements. They already have copies of all my evidence." "You can't prove anything," Adrian gasped. "It's your word against ours." Julian walked to one of the decorative vases on a shelf and removed a small camera. "It's your words against your words. Every conversation. Every plan. Every dose administered. All documented." Caroline began to sob, her body shaking. "Julian, please. It wasn't my idea. Adrian convinced me." "Don't." Julian cut her off. "Don't insult what's left of our marriage with more lies. The recordings show your enthusiasm for the plan once the initial hesitation wore off. You discussed how you'd spend my life insurance. Would you travel with my investment portfolio?" The sirens were very close now. Flashing lights appeared through the windows. "Julian," Caroline tried again, her voice breaking. 10 years together. That has to count for something." Julian looked at her. Really looked at her. Seeing not the woman he'd married, but the stranger she'd become, or perhaps always had been. "It counted for nothing to you," he said quietly. "Why should it count for anything to me now?" The door burst open as paramedics entered, followed closely by police officers. Julian stepped back, allowing them to take control of the scene. An officer approached him. "Mr. Rivers, I'm Officer Martinez. We received your call and the evidence files. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Julian replied. "They're the ones who need medical attention. Non-lethal purgative in their food." Self-administered justice. Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow. That's a matter for the courts to decide, sir. Of course, Julian agreed. Everything else is documented in the files I sent. I'll cooperate fully with your investigation. As the paramedics attended to Caroline and Adrian, Julian watched with detached composure. When they were escorted out, Caroline on a stretcher, Adrian in handcuffs, despite his physical distress, Julian remained behind to give his formal statement. The mask of love had been shattered, revealing the true faces beneath. And for the first time in months, Julian Rivers breathed freely. Unburdened by deception. 6 months later, Julian stood at the railing of his deck, watching the Willamette River flow past his new home. The modest riverside house was a stark contrast to the sleek modern home he'd shared with Caroline, but its simplicity suited him now. The trial had been mercifully brief. With a mountain of evidence Julian had gathered, including the chemical analysis of the poisonous compound and the video recordings of Caroline and Adrian discussing their plans, both had accepted plea deals rather than face full trials. Adrian, with his previous suspicious involvement in Portland, had received a harsher sentence, 12 years for conspiracy to commit murder. Caroline had gotten 8 years, eligible for parole after 5 with good behavior. The sentencing judge had been particularly scathing about the calculated nature of their plan and the betrayal of marital trust. Julian took a sip of his coffee, listening to the birds in the cypress trees lining the riverbank. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. He'd sold the house, liquidated their joint investments, and started fresh. The settlement had been straightforward, since Caroline had conspired to kill him for financial gain. She had forfeited any claim to their shared assets under Oregon law. "Nice view," Leo said, joining Julian on the deck with his own coffee. "Much better than that sterile showplace you had before." "It suits me," Julian agreed. "Thanks for coming to check on me." Leo leaned against the railing. "No need for thanks. That's what friends do." "How are the online classes going?" After leaving his software engineering position, Julian had started teaching coding to disadvantaged youth through an online platform. The work paid less, but gave him a sense of purpose he'd been lacking. "Going well," Julian replied. "I have some promising students. One girl in particular has a real aptitude for algorithmic thinking." "And how are you?" Leo asked. The question weighted with months of concern. Really, Julian considered the question. The initial shock had faded, leaving behind a clear-eyed perspective on what had happened. The rage that Leo had warned would eventually come had indeed arrived, weeks of sleepless nights and sudden, overwhelming waves of anger that had left him shaking. But even that had eventually passed, leaving a certain calm acceptance. "I'm okay," Julian said simply. "Not the man I was. Not sure who I'm becoming yet. But okay with the transformation." Leo Gale nodded. "I was worried about you for a while there. The way you planned everything, it was so cold, so calculated." "It had to be," Julian replied. "Emotion would have made me careless. Still, the Julian I knew in college would have been destroyed by something like this." "Maybe I'm stronger than we thought," Julian suggested. "Or maybe betrayal reveals who we really are." They stood in companionable silence, watching a blue heron stalk through the shallows of the Willamette River. Finally, Leo asked the question he'd been dancing around for months. "Do you regret any of it? How you handled things?" Julian thought carefully before answering. "I regret trusting someone who saw my love as weakness," he said finally. "But I learned an important lesson. Some betrayals deserve to be punished, not forgiven." "That's a hard way to live," Leo observed. "Maybe," Julian conceded. "But it's honest. I don't pretend to be more forgiving than I am." A notification chimed on Julian's phone. Another student had submitted their project for review. Life continued, one line of code at a time. "I should get back to work," Julian said. "Stay for dinner?" "I'm trying a new recipe." Leo smiled. "Absolutely. Though maybe you should let me taste it first, just for old time's sake." For the first time in months, Julian laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. Somewhere beneath the calculated logic and measured responses, something human remained, bruised but intact. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but a path forward nonetheless, as Julian turned ahead and sighed. He took one last look at the flowing river. Water never flowed backward. It simply found new channels when old ones were blocked. He was doing the same, moving forward, carving a new path through unfamiliar terrain. The betrayal would always be part of his story. But it would not be the end of it. I've been through a lot, and I know the journey's far from over. If you've been with me through this story, you've seen the twists and turns, the betrayal, and the moments where everything seemed lost. But here's the thing, I'm still standing, and I'm not alone. And neither are you. If you've ever faced the kind of devastation that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you, then you know the weight of carrying that burden. You know that sometimes the only way forward is to accept the hurt and find strength in the truth, even if it's painful. This story isn't just mine, it's for anyone who's had to rebuild after feeling like everything was taken from them. If you're still fighting, still figuring out how to move forward, I see you. And I want to hear from you. Tell me your thoughts, your stories, your moments of resilience. Comment below, share your own experiences, and let's keep this conversation going. You are part of this journey too. And if there's one piece of advice I can give, it's this: betrayal might be part of your story, but it doesn't have to define you. Life doesn't always go as planned. People will disappoint you, and things will go wrong, but there's always a way to carve out a new path. It's not about forgetting the hurt, but learning how to use it as fuel to become someone stronger. Take a step forward, even when it feels impossible. You are more than the worst things that have happened to you, and if I can find my way through, so can you. So, let's share, let's learn, and let's grow together. Because no matter where we've been, we're not done yet.